There's a war happening right now, not with guns or armies, but with influence, leverage, and control. And you're losing it because nobody told you it was even being fought. Every day, you watch people with less talent rise faster. You see manipulators rewarded while honest workers get discarded. You feel the invisible weight of systems designed to keep you compliant, grateful for scraps, while others feast. And somewhere deep in your gut, you know something is fundamentally wrong with the way you've been taught to navigate this world. You were sold a fairy tale. Work hard, be good, and success will follow. But that's not a strategy. That's a lullaby sung to keep you asleep while others play a completely different game. A game that Niccolo Machiavelli decoded over 5 centuries ago when he wrote the most banned, burned, and feared book in Western civilization. This isn't another motivational speech about positive thinking or manifesting your dreams. This is surgery. We're going to cut through the scar tissue of social conditioning and expose the machinery of power that operates beneath every interaction you have. By the end of this, you'll understand why the ruthless succeed while the righteous struggle. You'll know how to build influence that's bulletproof, how to neutralize opposition before it forms, and how to move through the world with the calculated precision of someone who sees the board while others are still looking for the pieces. But I need to warn you about something. This knowledge changes you permanently. Once you recognize the patterns, you'll see them everywhere. Every conversation, every business deal, every relationship will reveal its underlying mechanics. The handshake that seemed friendly, you'll notice the dominance play. The compliment that felt genuine, you'll catch the manipulation embedded in it. You'll walk through life watching people play poker while thinking they're playing Go Fish. Some call this cynical. Machiavelli called it necessary. If you want to remain innocent and naive, this isn't for you. Go back to believing people say what they mean and that fairness exists without enforcement. But if you're exhausted from being outmaneuvered by people half as talented but twice as strategic, stay with me. We're about to rebuild your operating system. Let's begin. Lesson 1. The death of idealism. According to Machiavelli, the first principle of power is brutal. Men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, and covetous. He wasn't being pessimistic. He was being accurate. And until you accept this foundational truth, you'll keep getting blindsided by the same betrayals wearing different faces. The problem isn't that you're too trusting. The problem is you're operating with a false model of human nature. You believe people are fundamentally good with occasional bad behavior. Machiavelli discovered the opposite. People are fundamentally self-interested with occasional good behavior. This isn't an insult. It's physics. Understanding gravity doesn't make you negative. It makes you a functional adult who doesn't step off cliffs. Think about your last major disappointment. A friend who betrayed your confidence. A partner who chose themselves over your relationship. A colleague who took credit for your work. In every case, you probably thought, how could they do that? Wrong question. The right question is, why did I expect anything different? Machiavelli said it plainly. Men judge more by appearances than by reality, and they're moved more by immediate benefits than by long-term consequences. Translation: people will choose what feels good now over what's right later. Every single time the stakes are high enough. Your job isn't to change this. Your job is to factor it into every calculation you make. Here's what this looks like in practice. That business partner who swears loyalty right now, they're loyal to the profit stream you represent. The moment someone offers them a better deal, watch that loyalty evaporate. This isn't betrayal. This is nature. Water flows downhill. Capital flows toward return. Humans flow toward advantage. Be the advantage, and they'll stay. Stop being valuable, and they'll find someone who is. The idealist says, but what about honor? What about integrity? And here's where Machiavelli gets uncomfortable. He argues that a leader who keeps his word when it damages him is a fool. Oaths are binding only when both parties benefit. The moment one side can gain by breaking the agreement is already broken. It just hasn't been announced yet. This doesn't mean you become dishonest. It means you stop expecting others to operate by codes they never agreed to. You stop projecting your morality onto people playing by completely different rules. You build systems where people's self-interest aligns with your goals, not where you hope their conscience will guide them to do right by you. Kill the idealist who believes the world should be fair. Resurrect the realist who understands the world as it functions. This isn't darkness. This is vision, the ability to see without the distortion of wishful thinking. And vision is the first weapon of power. Lesson 2. The masks we wear. Machiavelli discovered something that modern authenticity culture refuses to acknowledge. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. In other words, your reputation isn't what you are. It's what you engineer people to believe you are. And that engineering is not optional if you want to survive. The moment you step into public space, a boardroom, a first date, a social gathering, you are being evaluated. Not on your internal character, but on the signals you broadcast. Your posture, your voice tone, your response speed, the stories you choose to tell. These aren't trivial details. They're the raw materials of perception. And perception, according to Machiavelli, is the only reality that matters in the realm of power. Think of the colleague who gets promoted despite doing less work than you. They've mastered something you haven't: impression management. They know when to speak in meetings and when to nod thoughtfully. They understand that looking competent is more valuable than being competent because most people can't distinguish between the two. They've built a persona that radiates leadership, and the organization responds to that radiation. Here's what Machiavelli actually said. It's necessary for a prince to appear merciful, faithful, humane, upright, and religious. Notice he said appear, not be. Why? Because if you are genuinely merciful to everyone, you'll be destroyed by those who aren't. If you're genuinely faithful to every promise regardless of changing circumstances, you'll be exploited. The mask isn't hypocrisy. The mask is strategy. Let me be precise about what this means. You need two versions of yourself: the private architect and the public monument. The architect is your true self, your doubts, your calculations, your moments of weakness. This version exists only in your own mind, and perhaps with one or two people who've earned total access. The monument is what the world sees: unshakable, competent, principled. When you're falling apart inside, the monument stands firm. When you're uncertain about the decision, the monument projects decisive confidence. When you're angry, the monument chooses whether to display that anger strategically or to smile while planning 5 moves ahead. This isn't lying. This is tactical communication. According to Machiavelli, most people judge with their eyes, not their hands. They don't investigate deeply. They respond to the surface. So craft a surface that serves your goals. If you want to be trusted, cultivate the appearance of reliability. If you want to be feared, cultivate the appearance of unpredictability. If you want to be loved, cultivate the appearance of warmth. But never confuse the appearance with your actual self. The private you is vulnerable, complex, and changeable. The public you is a weapon. Keep them separate. Guard the boundary like your life depends on it, because in many ways, it does. Lesson 3. The Lion and the Fox. Machiavelli said a prince must know how to use both the beast and the man, and must understand that one without the other cannot endure. He specifically identified 2 beasts: the lion, which cannot defend against traps, and the fox, which cannot defend against wolves. You must be both, and you must know exactly when to switch between them. Most people have a default mode. Some are natural lions, aggressive, confrontational, loud. They solve every problem with force. Others are natural foxes, clever, evasive, political. They solve every problem with maneuvering. Both types get destroyed because real power requires fluidity, the ability to shift form based on the threat landscape. Here's what this looks like in application. Someone spreads a rumor about you at work, trying to damage your reputation quietly. This is a trap, not a direct attack. If you respond like a lion, storming into meetings, confronting people angrily, demanding justice, you fall into the trap. You look paranoid and aggressive. The fox's response: smile, appear unbothered, begin quietly documenting every interaction with the person spreading rumors, build an alliance network, and when the moment is right, have them exposed through channels that don't trace back to you. Now flip the scenario. Someone openly challenges your authority in a meeting, trying to undermine you in front of leadership. This isn't a trap. This is a wolf, a direct threat that requires a display of dominance. If you respond like a fox, trying to be clever, making subtle comments, hoping others will defend you, you appear weak. The lion's response: immediately and publicly shut down the challenge with facts, make them look incompetent in the moment, established that challenging you has consequences. According to Machiavelli, injuries should be done all at once so that, being tasted less, they offend less. Benefits should be granted little by little so they're appreciated more. Translation: when you must hurt someone, do it completely and immediately. When you reward someone, do it gradually. One massive blow is felt less than many small cuts because the victim can adapt. But many small rewards feel more generous than one large gift. This is the dark calculus of strategy. Don't wound an enemy and leave them functional. Either avoid the conflict entirely or end their ability to retaliate. Half measures create resentment without removing threat. You end up with an enemy who's been hurt just enough to want revenge, but not hurt enough to be neutralized. Machiavelli discovered that the greatest leaders aren't the strongest or the smartest. They're the most adaptive. They read the terrain, identify whether it requires strength or cunning, and deploy whichever tool fits. Be water when the situation needs fluidity. Be stone when it needs foundation. Be fire when it needs destruction. Never be predictable. Lesson 4. Emotional alchemy. Machiavelli observed that fortune controls half our actions, but we control the other half through our will. But here's what most people miss. You can't control that half if you can't control yourself. Emotions are the invisible strings by which others manipulate you. Cut the strings, and you become dangerous. The average person is a puppet to their emotional reactions. Someone insults them, they lash out. Someone threatens them, they panic. Someone flatters them, they drop their guard. Every emotional response is a vulnerability waiting to be exploited. According to Machiavelli, the prince who relies on what people say rather than what they do is ruined. And the same principle applies internally. The person who relies on what they feel rather than what they think is ruined. Watch what happens in a negotiation when one side gets emotional. They start revealing information they shouldn't. Their voice pitch rises, their gestures become erratic, their thinking gets clouded. Meanwhile, the person who remains calm is collecting data. They're watching pupil dilation, listening for voice cracks, noting the specific trigger points. Emotion is information leaking out. Composure is a locked vault. Machiavelli said the prince must be like a fox to recognize traps, and must have a fox's cunning to confuse the wolves. But cunning is impossible when you're flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. Your prefrontal cortex shuts down. You revert to instinct. Instinct might keep you alive on the savannah, but it destroys you in complex social warfare. Here's the practice. When something triggers you, an insult, a betrayal, a threat, insert a 5-second pause before responding. In that pause, you're not suppressing the emotion. You're observing it. I notice I'm feeling angry right now. That's interesting. What is this anger trying to protect? What does this person want me to do by triggering it? Once you understand the mechanism, you can choose your response instead of having it chosen for you. According to Machiavelli, it's better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both, because love is sustained by obligation, which men will break whenever it serves them. But fear is sustained by dread of punishment, which never fails. Why does this matter for emotional control? Because if people can make you angry, sad, or afraid on demand, they control you through your need for emotional regulation. But if you're the one who controls when to display emotion and when to withhold it, you control them. Perform anger strategically when it serves your purpose. But your pulse shouldn't actually rise. That's the difference between a tantrum and a tactic. You're not being authentic. You're being effective. Master your inner weather, and you can predict everyone else's storms while standing in perfect calm. Lesson 5. The utility of morality. Machiavelli said something that still gets people burned at metaphorical stakes. The prince who wants to maintain his rule is often forced to act against mercy, faith, humanity, and religion. Not because he's evil, but because circumstances demand it. Morality, in his framework, isn't absolute. It's contextual. And this is where most people's brains short-circuit. You've been taught that certain things are always wrong. Lying, manipulation, ruthlessness. But Machiavelli discovered that leaders are judged not by their methods, but by their results. If a CEO is honest and transparent, but runs the company into bankruptcy, destroying thousands of jobs, was that morality? If a leader lies about short-term problems to prevent mass panic that would cause greater harm, was that immorality? According to Machiavelli, a prince should seem merciful, faithful, humane, honest, and religious, but his mind should be flexible enough to change as circumstances require. This isn't about becoming a sociopath. It's about recognizing that rigid adherence to principles in a fluid world is suicide. The person who refuses to ever lie will be outmaneuvered by people who lie strategically. The person who refuses to ever be cruel will be crushed by those who understand that sometimes cruelty prevents greater suffering. Think about this in your own life. You have a toxic friend draining your energy, but you keep them around because cutting them off feels mean. That's not morality. That's cowardice dressed as kindness. Machiavelli would tell you, be decisive. Either commit to helping them or remove them completely. The middle ground where you're suffering, but they remain unchanged, serves no one. The same logic applies professionally. You have an employee who's destroying team morale, but you hesitate to fire them because they have a family. Your hesitation seems compassionate, but what about the 10 other employees whose work environment you're poisoning? What about the company that might fail if the rot spreads? Sometimes the moral choice is the harsh choice. Machiavelli's insight isn't that you should abandon ethics. It's that you should abandon the pretense that one ethical framework applies to all situations. Be flexible in your methods while remaining fixed in your ultimate goal. If that goal is building something valuable, protecting the people you care about, or creating order from chaos, then use whatever tools achieve it. Lesson 6. The power of absence. According to Machiavelli, all visible things gain respect through rarity. What is plentiful becomes cheap. What is scarce becomes precious. This applies to gold, diamonds, and you. The moment you make yourself constantly available, you become background noise. But when you withdraw, you become magnetic. Most people are terrified of absence. They answer every text immediately. They say yes to every invitation. They over-explain, overshare, over-presence themselves until they're taken for granted. Machiavelli discovered that familiarity breeds contempt not because people are cruel, but because human psychology values what it might lose and ignores what it's guaranteed to have. Think about relationships where someone was obsessed with you until you reciprocated, then their interest vanished. That's not personal. That's the mechanics of desire. The moment you became available, you became solved. The mystery collapsed. They stopped projecting fantasies onto your silence because there was no more silence to project onto. Here's what this means strategically. In negotiations, the person willing to walk away holds all power. If you need the deal, you've already lost. Your need is visible, and visible need is exploitable. But if you can genuinely detach from the outcome, if you can let the silence hang in the air without rushing to fill it, the other side will start making concessions to fill that void. Machiavelli said princes should delegate the distribution of harsh measures and keep for themselves the distribution of favors. Why? Because when you're the source of good things but someone else delivers bad news, you maintain love while exercising necessary cruelty. Applied personally, be rare with your presence, but when you show up, bring value. Your absence creates hunger. Your presence delivers satisfaction. That cycle creates addiction. In conversation, speak half as much as you think you should. Let others fill the silence with revelations. Weak people talk to relieve their own anxiety. Strong people listen while others expose their hand. When you do speak, make it count. Make every word carry weight. According to Machiavelli, a prince should guard against being despised and hated. You avoid hatred by not seizing people's property or women. You avoid contempt by appearing resolute and respected. Translation: withdraw your presence strategically, but never appear like you're hiding. Absent because you're valuable elsewhere, not absent because you're irrelevant. The difference is everything. Lesson 7. The Architect. Machiavelli wrote The Prince for one type of person, the architect, not the person content to rent space in someone else's structure, but the one determined to build their own fortress. Everything we've covered leads here, to the fundamental question, what are you building? According to Machiavelli, fortune is like a violent river that floods the plains but can be controlled by those who build dikes and dams during calm weather. Most people blame circumstances when life destroys them. But Machiavelli discovered that circumstances destroy the unprepared, not the unlucky. The person who builds defenses before the storm arrives survives. The person who waits for perfect conditions drowns. This is about total ownership. You can't control the economy, but you control your skill development. You can't control other people's loyalty, but you control the leverage that keeps them aligned with you. You can't control random disasters, but you control whether you've built redundancy and resilience into your systems. Machiavelli said it clearly. A prince must have no other objective or thought but war and its organization and discipline, because everything else depends on your ability to defend what you build. Translate that to modern life. Your war is the competition for resources, attention, and autonomy. Your army is your skills, your network, your reputation. Your fortress is the life structure you're constructing that can't be easily destroyed by one job loss, one breakup, one market shift. Are you building that fortress, or are you camping in someone else's shadow hoping they'll protect you? The architect thinks in decades. While others are optimizing for weekend plans, you're planting trees that will provide shade in 10 years. Machiavelli observed that people judge by immediate results because they can't see into the future. This is your advantage. Let them chase instant gratification. You're building compound interest across every domain. Here's the final piece Machiavelli taught. A prince should seem to be all mercy, all faith, all integrity, all humanity, all religion, but must be ready to act contrary to these when necessary. This isn't about becoming a villain. It's about becoming sovereign. Sovereign over your time, your attention, your decisions, your life trajectory. You wear the mask the world needs to see. You use the lion or fox as situations demand. You control your emotions instead of being controlled by them. You deploy morality strategically rather than dogmatically. You master absence and presence as tools of influence. And you build something that outlasts you. That's what thinking like Machiavelli means. Not cruelty for its own sake. Effectiveness for survival's sake. Power not to oppress others, but to ensure others cannot oppress you. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be sovereign. The board is visible now. The pieces are in your hands. What you build with this clarity is yours to decide. Most will forget this by tomorrow. A few will rebuild everything. If you're one of the few, the world will feel you coming. Thank you so much for staying with me through this exploration. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might benefit from it.